Okay. Waiting for comments. Oops, no, don't want to do that. Okay. I think we're live. I'm waiting for the little number things to come up to show that people are on. Hello, if you're there. Okay, I see people are here. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll just wait a couple minutes. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Maria. I'm glad you're here.
It's kind of fun to do that. Can you guys hear us and see us okay? Are we good?
Pixelated at all?
Yeah, frozen and weird like faces. I think we're good. Let us know. Hi, Monica. Haven't seen you in a while. So I'm guessing you guys can hear and see us. Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. Good.
All right. So welcome to our ethics and spirituality talk. This is Shane. I'm Shane.
Interesting, isn't
it? You might know him. His channel is linked below. I'm pretty sure I linked it below. Go check him out. Hi, Kathy. Welcome. We want to say, do chime in. This is an open discussion talking about ethics and spirituality, or you can say morals and spirituality, moral values. If you have something you want to say or want to discuss, please put it in the comments. Don't be shy. We both feel we can just talk. Okay, so anything you want to say, Shane?
No, hello, everybody. Hello. We're going to let Julianne kind of take the lead here. And yeah, I second her. If you have any comments, any questions, feel free. And I'm sure Julianne always appreciate the conversation going back and forth and making sure everybody is included.
Yeah. Hi, Anand. And if you're watching this back later, put stuff in the comments. I'll check back. Shane, you can come check back.
For sure.
And this could also lead to other discussions. So we'll see what happens. Okay. So first we figured we need to define what ethics is. And that can vary from person to person, culture to culture, religious, spiritual background to religious, spiritual background. But to me, being ethical means being respectful and compassionate and understanding towards other people. So it's, you don't have to agree with someone on everything. You don't have to live the same lifestyle or have the same practices, spiritual or otherwise, but you respect other people for them and their opinions. If you disagree, you don't attack or bash. You treat them with compassion and let them do their thing. You can't try. It's like, I think a lot of people who get caught up in a spiritual path or a religious path or just their own views feel they need to force change upon other people. But I don't feel that's ethical. You can show by example. You can show by sharing what you do. If someone's going to shift their view towards yours, that's up to them. It's not up to you to change somebody else. So it's being respectful, being compassionate for where they are. You don't know their life experiences, why they react a certain way, why they believe a certain thing. And, if you disagree, you disagree. So that's kind of my definition of being ethical. Are you being basically a good person? And just saying that can trigger some people, but are you being a good person? Are you being kind? And, if you know someone and their beliefs and behaviors and lifestyles are just so not yours and it bothers you, you can just not engage with them anymore. You don't have to attack or fight back or, do anything harmful. And harmful is physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual harm.
Yes.
So,
do no harm.
Your definition of ethics or morals?
Basically the same. Shoot. Oh, my good pen, I think, just ran out. Basically the same thing. I did look up the definition just to see like an actual definition from Webster's, right? And it just says moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what you're saying is you have certain principles, moral principles such as compassion, generosity, understanding that govern your moral behavior.
Yeah.
And I think some of those are universal, I think, but certainly not all of them. I would add moral principles such as, honesty, which I think you can agree with. So it's ethical to be honest.
Yes.
The do no harm, I think, is the most important point that you brought up. And that really should be universal. I don't think it is, but it feels like one of the ones that is more universal that people can agree on. Like, we shouldn't intentionally be causing harm on anybody for any reason.
Right. And right. You like saying intentionally is important there, because there's always those circular arguments about, is that good or evil, or is that black magic or white magic? And it becomes this type of circular argument, because you never know all the repercussions of all your actions, all your your thoughts, your views, your words. But if your intentions, and often we have to reflect upon that, are my intentions good? Are they compassionate? Are they being kind? Because I think passive aggressive behavior can sneak in there. That's important, and as long as you're pretty sure your intentions are kind or good or pure, and it's hard to not use those words because they can be triggering, but really that's kind of what it is. Then you just trust in that ethicalness of your intentions, really. And another, Shane and I talked about this earlier this week when we talked about doing this. I like to point out, like in yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, there's the yamas, the niyamas, and then you go into the pranayama, the asanas, so the breath work and the physical practice, and then like various forms of meditation. The first principle of the first step or stage of the 8 limbs of yoga is ahimsa, which is nonviolence. And that should be the foundation for, ideally, right? We're not all perfect. This doesn't happen for anyone. But ideally, everything we do, everything we say, our actions, it's really like that cause and effect, that Buddhist concept. Like, what if I do this, what happens? And it's not usually like linear, one thing, right? It's this web of complications, right? So it gets complicated. But yeah, if our intentions are good or kind, and we're pretty sure what we're saying or doing is not causing harm, violence, again, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, to another person intentionally, we can't control any unintentional outcomes, then we're being ethical. We're being, quote unquote, a good person. So I just want to look at the comments here. You can add in, Shane.
What I would say, and a question for you. Okay, so say, say by, calling somebody out on something, is going to cause them harm, right? It's going to cause them emotional stress, to be thrown into a conversation. But what if you are doing that because you fear for the safety of others? You fear that this person in particular isn't acting ethically, and you need to warn others. But in doing so, you've really hurt that person that's, in your opinion, not acting ethically. What's your thought there?
That's an awesome question or scenario. So one I would ask is calling someone out in a respectful manner. You can still do it, you're calling someone out, right? But you can, don't have to be like angry, bitchy bashing, right? Is that harming them, or is that just bruising their ego a little bit and giving them a wake-up call? And that's hard to judge because you don't know what's everything going on within that person's psyche, basically, right?
Right.
But if it's to protect other people who are in harm's way for sure, I think it's okay, but done respectfully. Like, this makes me think of a question someone asked the Dalai Lama once, is it okay to like physically harm someone to protect other people? And basically his answer was yes.
Yeah.
If it's protecting people who are definitely in harm's way, I think it was like, could you kill someone to protect someone else? It was something like that. I read this years ago. He said, yeah, if it's to protect someone, which is more important, let that person kill that other person or stop them from killing that person and possibly other people. So yeah, this is like, ethics, it doesn't have to be dogmatic. It doesn't have to be, again, it's not always so cut and dry. We have to analyze the situation. We have to analyze our motives, our intentions. We have to look at the other people, including people whom we think are being evil or bad or, malicious, and look upon them with compassion and decide from there. But that can take a long time. And sometimes the process, I've experienced this myself, the process of thinking about, like, is this the right thing to do? Should I do that? Where's that person in their life that I can tell from my distanced, impersonal perspective? And sometimes through that thought process, I decide, you know what, I just won't take action. It's not a beneficial thing to anyone in any way, so it can be quite complicated, but yeah.
For sure.
But I would, my ethics are, if it's helping other people, then calling out one person, again, as respectfully and compassionately as possible, depending on the situation, would be worth it. And that ego bruise often helps to wake someone up. So it's not liking something, not liking something, that ego bruise feeling is not actual harm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not harm caused by other people. It's waking up something people know within themselves. But that too is like, you have to discern that, right? It's not so clear. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that, what I try to keep in mind, I was taught this a long time ago, and I saw somebody's video recently that was talking about it too. I forget who, but we are all in our own bubble, right? We're all in our own ego bubble. And no matter what we're doing, really, no matter what anybody is doing, typically they're not doing it because they think they're wrong.
Right.
They're doing everything they're doing and saying everything they're saying because they think they're right. And I know if I'm thinking in those terms, I can be a lot more compassionate. Mm-hmm. Sometimes not even compassionate, but understanding or forgiving, or not as vindictive. Mm-hmm. If I can realize, like, that's messed up what they just said, but that's really what they think. And in their mind, they're doing and saying this stuff because they purely believe that is their ethical code. That is their moral code. Mm-hmm. And I can think all I want to that it's wrong or they're failing, but I will never, I can't know for sure. There is no I don't know what the universal code for morality is. Right. I think that I can look inside my heart and kind of figure some of it out. I can feel that, but at the end of the day, really, who knows?
Yeah, and that's a good thing to bring up is, like, if you and someone disagree with something, random general scenario, right? Mm-hmm. And you're pretty sure you're right. Again, they might really think they're right.
Usually.
So you have to understand that. You can't look at it like, I'm right, you're wrong. It's like, okay, we both think we're right. And then it's like, well, maybe I'm wrong. You may not be, right? It's right. a lot of like reflecting and looking at the situation and realizing that the other person doesn't think just like you, maybe will never think just like mm-hmm. you, and not necessarily should think just like you.
Right. We're all conditioned.
Paths. We're all have different experiences. Yeah. We all have different issues in our psyche.
We tend, I'm no exception. I tend to think, this is morally right. So everybody should think this is morally correct. That's just like, duh. But I have been shaped. I have been shaped by the way I was brought up, by the culture I'm living in, by the city I live in, by the people that are surrounding me, by my family, my friends, the books I've read, the music I listen to. I have been conditioned by absolutely everything in my life up until this point. So it makes sense that we are wildly different mm-hmm. in our moral beliefs. And can't we, when really disagreeing with somebody, take a step back and say, I think this person is tragically wrong. But I wonder how they were raised and what they were taught and what they went through that made them have this kind of thought process.
And it could be their thought process now has evolved from, 10 years ago, 20 years,
Right.
their childhood and their upbringing. So they may actually feel they have advanced quite a bit, where you or I might think, oh, that's, why are they thinking that? Where are they coming from? I just want to check a comment. So I put this up earlier, but respect without judgment is so important. We need, I feel we need more of that. Yeah. Respect without judgment. You can still be discerning, like, do you want to be friends with that person or not, but judgment is when you throw stuff back, you throw shade, you attack, you talk back bad behind their back. It's labeling people. Artsy Girl, hello, says my friend disagrees regarding my vaccine. So this could be a good thing to talk about. Yeah, the whole pandemic, wearing masks, whatever, distancing and all that stuff. My view has been, I don't care what your personal beliefs are. You are free to have them about the whole thing, whether you think it's fake, whether you think you should wear 2 masks all the time in your home, whatever. But be kind. I always pick like 3 words: be kind, respectful, and responsible. So being kind is, when you're around other people, wear your mask, because other people might be really scared and worried about it. Maybe they have a health condition. They're 30 years old, but they have multiple health conditions. You have no idea by looking at them. And, you go out in public and cough in their face. You are scaring them. You could potentially be spreading it and killing them. So be kind, be respectful to other people's views on the whole thing, including the vaccine, and be responsible to yourself, to your loved ones, and to other people. So, so that applies to something like the vaccine. Some people agree. Most people, I think, are getting the vaccine. If you disagree, so if your friend disagrees, you might be bringing this up because she said things to you. Likely this stuff is going on, right? Just tell her she's free to have her opinion. You respect that. You're not going to force her or browbeat her, send her text messages every hour to get one. You're just going to, peace, like you say, peace, and if your friend can't stop, badgering you about it, then you just stop communicating, because you don't need to take on that attack. That is violence too, So that's, be respectful, all parties. Think about the other, very Buddhist concept. Think about the other, you don't know where someone's coming from, their fears, their beliefs, their health conditions, if any. Maybe they don't because they have 10 kids and they need to take care of them. There's no one to help if you're sick. Think about other people's potential situations. Anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, just I am so quick to judge. Whether I am intentionally doing it or not, I'm quick to make judgments in my head.
Normal. That's normal.
But
normal. We do
what we do with that makes the difference, right? So when I see somebody without a mask, my initial is, wow, that's selfish.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what kind of medical, issues they may be dealing with. It's not really my place to judge them. Now, when I'm in a speedway and I see 3 construction workers, young men coming in, and all 3 of them don't have masks on, then I'm upset. Like, not all 3 of you have a health condition where you can't wear a mask.
Yeah.
And my stance on that has always been kind of the same. Like, whether or not I think I need to wear a mask is kind of moot. That's a moot point. Like, the only thing that it may be hurting to wear a mask is my ego.
Right.
Like, screw the government. I'm not going to listen to them. I'm not going to be a sheep, so I'm not going to wear a mask. I get it. But what if it's real? For those that don't think it is, what if it's real? What if you are, some people don't show symptoms. What if I'm carrying it and don't realize it? And I cough in a store and somebody picks it. I have no idea.
Right.
So since it's not going to physically harm me,
it's asymptomatic transmission, right? That's why there's the whole mask thing. Like, people, please wear your mask. Yeah. So, it's totally normal. Yeah. Like, you know, you can look at that like a year ago, that picture of someone, a middle-aged woman having a temper tantrum in Costco. And it's like, are you a spoiled little 2-year-old? Put a freaking mask on and just do your shopping and take it off when you leave, you know? Yeah, it's quick, it's easy. You know, we all judge like that. But I do have a friend. She gets like panic attacks with her face covered because she had a lot of trauma as a child. So yes, she'll put on her mask to be kind, respectful, and responsible. But sometimes she has to hold it a little bit away, you know. But she does it, you know, when it's like she's not potentially spreading things to people, you know. But will react. Like one time she had to go to the bank. There's the plastic shield. The guy behind the shield had the mask on. She had hers on, but she had to hold it out because she was having, you know, a lot of struggles. And the guy was freaking out. It's like, no, don't worry. You have plenty of protection. She still has her mask. It's okay. So, but that's so normal. We just have to, you know, we won't always catch ourselves because sometimes we're in the moment, right? But reflecting upon it and say, you know what, I could have handled that better. The situation was okay. You know, yeah. So don't beat yourself up if you find yourself judging, or you probably have judged. We all do. Just say, you know what, maybe I can handle that a bit more kindly or more respectfully, more responsibly, you know? And that's where I like to always get those 3 words, because it's like those 3 words can cover everything. And then like you can remind yourself of those. Let me just go through the comments here. Kathy says, ethics are a personal code. Yeah, I don't know if you hear right at the beginning, but it's different from person to person, culture to culture. Hi, Gigi. Yeah, doing the ethical thing can be the toughest thing.
Especially when you're not sure.
Yeah.
When you're not sure.
That's where it's like definition of what it is, you know? Are you know?
I feel like I'm doing the right thing, and I feel like I should be doing this, but you know, is it? And that makes it very difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, some more on that. And Anand says, the last few weeks were so fiery. I'm a very fiery person. I like this Buddhist fierce compassion. Can you define fierce compassion for us?
I'm looking it up right now. Fierce compassion.
Fierce compassion as like you're working really hard and impassioned to be compassionate, or is it an outward action upon other people, like forceful compassion? And then is that violence? So this is making me think of what is it called? It's some sort of group. They're like sea pirates, but they're not called that. Some sort of environmental group called sea, and that's for the ocean environment and blah blah blah. Blah 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 for the ocean environment and stuff. And this was years ago. A friend who was interested in the group, and she was talking about it, and she's like, yeah, they'll go and they do these like forceful attacks, like some, you know, I don't hear about it much anymore, but I'm not so up on the news, but like back in the day in the 80s and 70s, like environmental groups would like bomb places, right? So they'd attack to make a point, things like that. You know, she was talking about they were doing like some forceful thing, and you know, we were discussing it, and you know, she's like, is that helping? And I was like, well, they're trying to get a point across, and being violent, it can, but it can taint your point, right? Because it's harming other people. What is better to do is to teach your point without forcing it on other people. So like to spread the word about something that you're passionate about, especially compassionate, right? Like environmental causes. You want to educate people and then leave it up to them to make a decision. You don't want to force people to fight for your cause and believe in what you're doing, or to force them to see what's going on in the world, because that usually just pushes people away, because it's attack and it's telling people you're wrong and you should do what I do and think what I think.
Yeah.
maybe they're just busy. Maybe they don't have the energy for, you don't know masses of people's situations. So fierce compassion.
I
Sorry.
looked it up.
Yeah, what did you see?
It's a form of activism, and it starts with love and compassion for oneself. A lot more on it. That's just the beginning of it.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's talking about, okay, it starts with understanding yourself and your flaws, your shortcomings. Because if I am in touch with mine, if I'm realizing and I'm working on myself, and I realize I have these flaws, I am much more likely to forgive those flaws and other flaws in other people. Now, if I'm not looking at those and I'm all angry with myself and pissy because I did this and I did that and I'm not behaving the right way, I am more likely to get angry and less patient with other people because I'm on that wavelength.
Yeah.
So the more I'm compassionate with myself, the more I can have compassion for other people. And then doing that fiercely, making sure that is a part of your everyday routine. You're going out of your way, you're being extra compassionate. I feel like that's what it means when it says fierce compassion.
And it's work, it's practice, right? So Shannon talked about, spirituality, whatever branch or religious or not, whatever it is for you, it's a practice. And a practice is something you do regularly. Every day, every other day, 5 times a day, whatever it is. And even if that practice is checking in with yourself, like, oh, am I being compassionate? Was I a jerk? Oh, wow, I was. Okay, I need to work on that. So it's practice, practice, practice. And it's not easy. It should not be easy. I think people like it to be easy. It's like, oh, I'm spiritual. Everything's great. It's like, no, it's hard. It's very hard. Because you have to bruise your own ego and be like, wow.
Yeah. It's not easy at all.
Or like you mentioned, like if you don't have compassion for you, you get angry at other people for the same thing. So you're projecting. Projecting. A lot of us do this. We project our anger or dislike about something we did or said or whatever. And often it's subconscious and we project it on other people that we see it in. So, we see someone and we're like, oh, that's so selfish, blah, 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 blah. And you go rant to a friend about it or something. Check in and see, is there something about myself that reminds me of that, I don't like? And so I'm really like ticked off when I see it in someone else.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. So
more often than not, when you're seeing something that you're not liking in somebody else, it's an aspect of yourself. Yeah. But I always like to follow that with, that's not always the case. Not
always the case. It could just be you're just like, you hate that behavior because I don't know, your sister did that to you all the time or something, and it's just like you just won't tolerate it. So it's not always the case, but I always feel it's good to reflect when you're having those judgments or those strong emotions. And then of course this can all lead into like things like shadow work, which is a much deeper process, but it's a way to, it's part of being spiritual, if you want to say, like making yourself a better person. How can I be a better person? How can I be more kind? How can I be more ethical? And that, usually that improves our lives, usually. So, yeah.
Usually, yeah. It can't really hurt. It can be painful.
It can't hurt it
at all. It's not going to hurt you.
It may not improve like the physical stuff in your life, but your life within. Let's see. And no one says when you're triggered by rudeness. Yeah. Kathy says, Shane, you can always say that you aren't sure to share your.
I typically don't ask permission to share my concerns and thoughts. I'm going to share them whether people like it or not.
Some very rude people need this kind of compassion, anger to help. Then they really get it. And there's personalities involved here, different personalities, and some people just tend to be more fiery and angry and like impassioned by things, and that's fine. Still there's reflection. Am I spewing that anger on other people, or I'm just presenting myself as a very impassioned person who's angry about this, right? So are you dumping it on other people and causing harm, or are you just expressing it as who you are? Violence doesn't solve, oops, where are we? It flipped. Violence moved as I was clicking. Violence doesn't solve, it creates a whole host of other problems. Exactly. Yeah, it exacerbates the problem, and it creates a whole host of other problems.
Yeah. And Kathy, I think that violence, Julianne brought it up earlier. When we say violence, we automatically think physical violence. Mm-hmm. But that statement can also be applied to emotional violence, you know, and I think that is just as important. And if not just it's probably more harmful than physical violence. Physical, you know, if I'm hurt physically, you know, that's going to go away. I get punched in the face, that's gone in a week, you know, no scars, you know, no nothing. But emotional violence, somebody wants to get emotional, you know, angry with me and violent emotionally and do some nasty stuff, that can be for some people a lifetime of getting over that and working through that. And so when we say, you know, violence doesn't solve, that's emotional. That's, you know, that's violence in every sense of the word creates all of these other problems. Violence is almost never going to solve anything. Every now and then, you know, violence, you know, in the case of protecting people, or I don't know, maybe some wars. Sometimes violence is necessary, but I believe those times are few and far between.
Mm-hmm. Then this is a great point. Violence is the intent of harming. Anger can be triggered by witnessing something truly unfair. Yeah. And then it's, what do you do with your anger? You let it fuel your actions to help. Or some people it might fuel them to violence, right? So it's like, what do you do with the anger? So anger is not bad emotion. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a new agey thing, to stuff down all those emotions.
Thank you, yes.
But it's like, no, if anger can fuel, it's fire, right? It's an element of fire. It can fuel great things. It can fuel, compassion. It can fuel creativity. It can fuel taking, like, you know, I don't know.
I think there's a balance there. You know, a few years ago, when I, you know, online, I was told by somebody I really looked up to that some of my videos were coming out a little bit angry, and maybe that in my anger I was losing some people's attention. And I think that can be true. I think you get overly dramatic and overly angry and overly self-righteous, you're going to lose people. But I am a fan of anger. I will listen when people are passionate. You know, anger often equates to passion, in my opinion. And you can tell the difference between passionate anger and just violent anger. There is a difference. And if I'm seeing passionate anger and people are screaming and yelling and pointing because they're fighting for something they're passionate about, that they believe in, I respect that a lot. So yes, anger can definitely be a really great thing.
Yeah. It's just all how it's put into action, right? But I also say, you know, don't suppress it.
Yeah.
Because then it comes out at like the worst moment and in the worst way. Mm-hmm. Something just adds too much fuel to that fire, and often, it will come out as attacking someone. So honor your anger when it comes up. That makes such a weird sound on the screen.
Was it my phone?
Yeah.
Violent here.
It's like these weird robot-y sounds. Where was I? Yeah. So, you know, honor your anger. I always tell people, honor what you feel. Honor it so that it doesn't, you don't like dump on someone else, or, you know, cause harm to someone else, or suck someone else's energy because you're not dealing with your own emotions, whatever come up, because they come up for a reason. And we can learn from our emotions about ourselves and why we feel them and what we can do about them. And if it's really like, it could be a sign, you need to take action on this. You need to fight for that cause. You need to stand up for yourself, whatever it is. And they're very important. Critical thinking. Well, violence is also when someone attacks someone's business, they take away income. Yeah. So, So going back to violence is not just physical. Mm-hmm. I've seen this in my own experiences, lots of people I've worked with, often the violence is presented as forms of abuse. And all abuse is emotional, whether it's physical, it's mental brainwashing, gaslighting, passive aggressive behaviors, whatever it is, outright, verbal attacks, it affects us all emotionally, whatever the form of violence or abuse it is, right? And we can hide that. And because we can hide our emotional wounds, they're not dealt with as clearly. So like, yeah, someone punches you in the face, you have a black eye, you put ice on it, you take care of it, you heal from that. But the emotional stuff that was going on behind it, whether you knew the person, didn't know the person, what you were doing at the time, whatever, like it's easy for us to just be like, oh, okay, let me just take care of the black eye and I'll be fine. Right. So the emotional stuff sticks there, and it's this, so that's why it takes a long time to heal, because we don't face it, we don't address it. Often we're ashamed of it for whatever reason. We feel guilty, embarrassed, and so a lot of us hide it, and so it can eat away at us. And sometimes when that happens, then we start to act out in the way we were treated. So this gets very complicated psychologically. And that's why I feel it's important for us to, honor whatever emotions arise and understand why they're there. Whether it's just, let's say we're angry about just a given situation in that moment, or it's a reminder of a pattern of ways in which we've gotten angry,
You got angry.
or we treated other people. It's like trying to show us a shadow, and we're like, oh no. We need to honor it so that we can heal and better ourselves. And often, bettering ourselves, it sounds so cheesy, but it's a healing process. And again, it doesn't feel good. Often you can feel really sick to your stomach and disgusted with yourself, but that's when you're on the right track.
Yeah.
You don't sit with those feelings every moment, every day, because you'd just be too exhausted to do life, but to honor it and check in with it however often you can, right?
Yeah. I feel like it can be even a larger affliction in spiritual communities, like this tarot oracle community, witchy community, that we're all community. I use that term loosely, because there's so much love and light, love and light, love and light, and that's not bad. There's definitely a place and a time and a use for love and light. But that's only half the equation. There's also a time and a use for, the darker aspects of ourselves. And if we're just constantly ignoring the bad, and I see it all the time in this community, eventually that bad is going to catch up. It's going to catch up with you. It's going to catch up with community. You can't ignore one without, and the same goes the other way. If that's all you're focused on, you're going to get dragged down into the mud. You're never going to be able to get back out, balance. And that's what life is. Everything is about balance. And I'm terrible with balance. I'm working on it, but
we all work on it. It's a balance. Yeah. Like, yes, you want to bless people with love and light, right? But when that becomes like rose-colored glasses with delusional optimism, or what's toxic positivity, right? That's the to me that's been going around. Then it actually becomes like passive aggressive behavior.
It is, yes.
And I feel passive aggressive behavior is more violent than aggressive behavior, because aggressive is like, hey, I'm being aggressive towards you. It's actually honest, right?
Yes.
Passive aggressive is both violent and a lie. And it's very manipulative. And those are the things that seep into people. They don't it can really get into people emotionally, and they're not aware of it because it's passive, right? Passive aggressive. And that can just like rot situations from the inside out, or rot communities from the inside out, and I think it's normal to respond to passive aggressive behaviors with passive aggressive behaviors, and it's usually not conscious. it sort of brings out our like snooty 12-year-olds in us, you know, mean girls, right? And
Yes.
like, and before we know it, we're caught up in this like, yeah, sludge of interaction and bashing other, like, and then it becomes a group thing, right? And then it's a herd mentality, and somehow you're caught up with it, and then you might realize, oh wow, this isn't right, but I'm like so caught up in it, you just go with it, right? Go
Yes.
with the in crowd.
Mm-hmm. So I think this might be a good time to kind of move into the direction of hierarchy and ethics, you know, specifically in the tarot community, because you do have a lot of passive aggressive behavior. And I feel like we have that, especially in this community, because people don't want to be honest. They don't want to be aggressive. They don't want to say their truth for fear that they will be blacklisted, they will be canceled, they will be threatened, they will be dragged through the mud. So instead of saying what they really mean or really want to say, they use passive aggressive tactics, thinking that they're being slick, thinking that it's all right, you know, as long as I don't do this, I'm still on the spiritual path. When in reality, people see they see what's going on.
Right.
And that's more harmful in the long run. It covers the dirt, it covers the bullshit. And you know that, and the longer it sits under there, the more it's going to rot and decay, you know, just.
And it's a poor example for people who are just sort of getting into their spiritual path or just into tarot, and you know, they're kind of seeing the spiritual side of it, and then they think that, maybe not consciously, right, but they get sucked into it, not knowing that that's a toxic situation. So I didn't listen or watch to your hierarchy video, so I'm not sure all that was so you could take charge on this now.
Well, I mean, it's nothing you really need to even watch a video on. You know, what's really was talked about is larger channels being very PC in all situations. You know, not wanting to give opinions or giving opinions that are in line with the popular and what is going to be most beneficial to them. Instead of being real and honest, they're doing what is going to benefit them more. And that's not every large channel by any means. But I think we do have to be careful, because there are channels, larger channels, that probably are here for purely monetary reasons, to do nothing but boost their ego. And if those are the channels, you know, those are the channels that are going to use toxic positivity, and they're going to use passive aggressive behavior, and they're never going to really give you a piece of their mind, because that's dangerous. It's dangerous for anybody, to be honest, on social media. You know, a lot of times you're going to have either this crowd or this crowd.
Channel doesn't mean you're toxic.
Right. No, I mean, I'm not talking about every big channel. Far from it. There are some really great channels with, you know, a lot of amazing, you know, followers. But I think I'm just saying we have to be careful when watching larger channels, because these problems can become even worse, because then you do get into the herd mentality, where everybody is simply following along with this behavior and these actions and this thought process, because they've come into the community and they see somebody they're looking at as a guru, right, behaving in this manner. So that must be what the community is for right now. That must be what we're doing,
right?
Which isn't always the case.
Yeah. And from a psychological perspective, you could be the kindest person, the most compassionate person, but you get caught up in a herd mentality in a group that you're identifying with, and you're looking up to a guru or someone on a pedestal. Psychologically, it's actually normal to just go with it. And, you know, it will, for those who are like really, you know, truly compassionate and kind and spiritual, or you say ethical people, it's going to eat away at you. And at some point you'll realize you'll just feel icky. And then you're stuck in the situation of, oh, these are all my friends, I need to break away. Or
and how much have I sacrificed of myself?
Something and stand up. And it creates this dilemma, you know, and but each person would have to judge for themselves, but you can ask, what is the right thing to do? What is the ethical thing to do? And will you do it?
It's and I keep making this correlation to high school, but it correlates so well because you're part of this clique in high school. Let's say a popular clique, and you feel like they're doing something wrong, but you're not going to say it. You're not going to act on it. You're not going to call them out because you want to be accepted. You want to be included. You want to be liked. And I think that is so prevalent in this community. I was like that when I first came here. Mm-hmm. I was very weak, and I very herd mentality, and I think maybe in this, not necessarily, but I feel like it could be worse in this community just because we are looked at as weirdos to a lot of people. We're already kind of on the outskirts, on the fringes in a sense of society because we're using, tarot and oracle and witchy practices.
People are so we community. So
much. Yeah, we want that. We come here looking for that. Mm-hmm. And the last thing we want to do is say, I don't agree. I can't go along with this. Count me out, because then what have you got? You haven't gotten anywhere, so and then once you get entrenched in that,
right? The fear mm-hmm. from this group of friends with a common interest, and you don't have that anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, once you get entrenched in that, once you let go of one or two of your moral principles, it becomes harder and harder and harder to dig yourself out, to be able to get out. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot more every step of the way in order to pull back from that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Do it. I mean, they just pull back completely and just cut out. And for some people, it's what you have to do. Mm-hmm. And it's like, everyone's a different person, has their own experiences and challenges. So how they're going to respond and react is really going to be up to them. But yeah, it's, I guess what we're talking about here is like ways to lose your ethics, right?
Yeah.
What are ways that you could be surprised that your ethics have slipped through your fingers, basically?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, and it can happen when we're not looking. To me, to you, to anybody, it's easy. You got to be constantly vigilant and look at your reasonings for doing absolutely everything. Mm-hmm. Every comment you make online, every action, every video I make, I have to be like, what are the reasons mm-hmm. I'm making this? Am I making this video out of ego? I want to be right, and so I'm making, or am I doing this video because I'm passionate about this, and this is really what I believe my truth is, and I want to share this, what reasons, what are, and I think that's the most important thing, is taking a step back, right, and looking, are my reasons sound? Does my reasoning fit in with my sense of morality, before I move forward, and if it doesn't, then you got to weigh, is it worth the fallout? If I behave in this way, am I going to like the fallout? Am I going to be able to deal with it emotionally?
Yeah. So question your motivations, your intentions, and then ask, am I being true to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Am I being honest with myself? I think is a better question.
And that's even harder. That's harder.
Yeah. And I know this probably sounds like a lot of work, but when you're on a spiritual path, it is about you improving yourself. And so, yeah, this constant reflection, it's not every moment of every day. Like I have a 3-year-old, I'm like react and I'm like, oh gosh, that was so bad. So like, I'm not always on it. No one's always on it. Mm-hmm. Right. But it's a practice. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes the normal, and it solidifies within you. It doesn't mean you still can't lose it, mm-hmm. In certain situations, but you must keep checking yourself. And especially when you're part of a group, a community, this is what happens in cults. People lose their sense of self. You could say they lose their truth, but that's very new agey, and I tend to shy away from those. They lose their ethics. They lose their boundaries. They lose they just lose themselves in the group, in the cult, in the herd, because there's this guru that they've put on a pedestal, this leader, and with passive aggressive like manipulations, there's usually like a grain of truth because that hooks people in.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like there's always that sort of like, oh, I just didn't sit quite right. But then you just keep going along and going along and going along. You basically brainwash yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it can be so hard. So I guess a cult is a perfect example. And then people who want to break away from a cult, they're ostracized, they can't contact their family. They're like, I'm thinking of like Scientology because I have this fascination with them and I've looked into it a lot in the past. It's like they're harassed on the phone, it's like your life is going to be horribly challenging to get away from it. They will do what they can to attack you. And that's like, that can happen in any sort of cult, herd mentality community where someone's put up on a pedestal and is treated like God, an infallible God, which to me gets into God complex because God complex is really devil complex, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's like,
yeah, and it's hard. So it's, having the practice of checking your ethics and checking where you are on your spiritual path. Are you checking in with yourself? Are you self-reflecting? Are you looking at how you're reacting to things and honoring your emotions? That's all going to help from getting caught into a cult or herd mentality in any situation in life, right? But also, especially like, like weirdo communities, like a tarot community, or especially when it's online too. And that's tricky because people hide behind the screens. You don't know really what's going on behind the scenes.
No.
You don't know what their life is really like. You only know what they've said on screen and maybe what you've seen in the background or what they've chosen to show you. So always keep that in mind. You don't know it all. Not someone you've sat down. I mean, yes, you can make friends with people online, but you've not sat with them, experienced them in their living situation, in their home. You haven't worked with them or gone to school with them or whatever. So keep that in mind when you're interacting with groups and communities. And are you getting sucked into an image of someone or what a community is? And is that image pulling you away from your ethics and your spiritual practice and your values? So
very well said.
I feel like that was a lecture.
No, it was good. That was great.
Right? Like, okay, here we go.
It's so tricky. It really is.
It is.
It really is. And it's it was very disillusioning for me when I first came into the community years and years ago, coming in thinking that this was going to be a super spiritual, enlightened community. And I think we have to keep that in mind when we're seeing new people coming in or people in chats, and that people come into this community unless they're very enlightened and know better. They come in thinking that this community is going to be a bit different. It's going to be more accepting. It's going to be more forgiving. It's going to be more open-minded, more enlightened. Not true. We have the same problems any other online community has. And that was very disillusioning for me when I got here. When that happened, when I was like, oh, geez, I had it all wrong. And it hurts all the more because you didn't think it was going to be like that.
Right. It crashes your vision, your illusion, right? And then your ego.
And just like the people on pedestals.
Stupid, or you feel ashamed, or you feel like, or you feel you got an advantage of. But yeah, people are people. All sorts of people you'll find in all walks of life. It's sort of like when people say put doctors up on a pedestal. Yes, they're a doctor. They went through a lot of schooling. They paid a whole lot of money. They're probably in a whole lot of debt and work 80 hours a week or more. They know a lot of stuff you may not know if you've not studied physiology and stuff yourself. And so doctors are put on a pedestal, but it doesn't mean they're infallible and don't make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean you shouldn't get second opinions and this and that, right? Or
And it doesn't always mean that their mistakes are detrimental.
Yeah,
there are
right.
certainly times where people, we all make mistakes, and it's the hardest thing in the world to backtrack and say, I was wrong. I thought I was so right, but I was wrong, and I admit that. And that is so hard. Yeah. So we need to remember to forgive.
But when people do that, they gain a whole lot of respect.
It's true.
They may, deal with the repercussions of like the mistake, right? Mm-hmm. They do gain, and another example is like priests. Let's say Catholic people look at priests as totally infallible, perfect spiritual being, or any any sort of person who's devoted their life to a religion or spiritual path. People have this tendency to think that they're perfect, enlightened human beings who can do no wrong, and everything they say is from God and perfect. It's not true. They are human beings. They make mistakes. Hopefully they're reflecting upon themselves a lot and like doing their spiritual practice. But that's not always the case either. I recently read something where I read it somewhere where something about a priest, who really believed, everything, and through the course of study, because they study psychology, they study therapy. Yeah, they study other religion. Like my uncle was a minister, in seminary school, he studied Buddhism. You do study other things. Mm-hmm. You block it out or not is, it's up to the person. But it was like someone talking about a priest they knew who kind of got to this point where he didn't really believe in God and all that he was teaching about or preaching about. I guess priests aren't preachers, and he just said, but it's an easy job, he goes through the motions, and he just decided to just keep it up.
Even though he didn't believe it.
The congregation or the parish wouldn't see that. They think of him as a super holy, infallible person. So I guess the point I'm making is don't get caught up in the illusion of what you expect someone to be. Mm-hmm. If they're human, they're human. They can make mistakes. You don't know what's going on deep inside, and just be aware of that. And if you want to know someone better, say, hey, can we talk? I want to get to know you, whatever. But check yourself when there's someone way up there and they're like holier than thou, greatest things and sliced bread, they're probably not. And that's okay. They probably have great things about them,
Yeah. Whoa, they're just like us, like
you're projecting what you want to be on someone else, and it's unreachable because they're so high up in your mind, right? And instead see what you like about them, even if it's a fantasy in your head, as inspiration for you to reach that yourself.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Yes.
And I think I know your answer, but I still think it would be interesting. I'm curious. Should people that have large channels be judged and looked at more carefully and more harshly because they have so much influence?
Are you talking about like million subscriber channels?
Let's say 50,000 or more.
Should they be judged more harshly?
Mm-hmm. Like say somebody with no followers, makes the mistake, mm-hmm. And everybody's like, okay, you're human, you've done this. But then somebody with, a following of 50,000 makes that same mistake. Mm-hmm. Should they be held a little bit more accountable for the fact that so many people are looking to them as
to be a spiritual channel?
Yes.
I think they should be held to a little more responsibility, yes.
Okay.
Maybe not harsh judgment,
mm-hmm.
but yes, I think it's normal to expect someone who's claiming to be spiritual or whatever the path, hold them, I think there should be an expectation that they will be more responsible.
I think you put it great, because we shouldn't have an expectation that they should be more moral. They
Right.
should be just, everybody, there's no, you need to be more moral because
Right.
you're more popular. But yes, there is a certain level of responsibility that one has to hold to moral standards,
Yeah.
or at least make sure that you're on that level, or trying. This gets tricky. Not that you can't make mistakes,
right,
but that you can't make those mistakes and ignore them.
right. You
can't
talk about those mistakes. That's responsible, and that can help other people. Yeah. But I mean, sometimes it comes down to like, what is the YouTube creator's motivation? Did they start up YouTube to basically become their career?
Mm-hmm.
Did they start it because they wanted to share their spirituality? And hey, by the way, they ended up making some money, which is great, because it can take a lot of time when you're, when your channel gets bigger. What is their motivation? And do you know what their motivation is? Is it clear? Right?
So let me ask you, let's talk about this for a second. So do you think that channels in this community, let's say these are channels that that do nothing but really do spreads, they do walkthroughs, they do deck reviews, they don't talk about anything really personal, okay? When something such as, and we're not getting into this topic right now, but when something such as racism comes into the community and is being talked about, do those channels have a responsibility to talk about it, or no? Because what they're doing is they started this channel as a career. They only came here to do these deck reviews and to provide material and insights. They didn't come here to give any kind of moral philosophy. Mm-hmm. So they don't have that responsibility. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say their purpose of like having a channel is just, I call it a deck channel, to show decks, to talk about decks. Mm-hmm. That can just be completely an intellectual thing. And they're not in a place in their lives, in their work, in their channel, to talk about moral things, ethical things, then I don't feel they should feel pressured to. If they want to, if that's what they practice behind the scenes and they want to share that, sure. But yeah, if it's like strictly a deck channel, I don't feel they should be held responsible to do that, because that's not what they're doing. That's not their goal. Again, we don't know who they are behind the scenes. If it's purely like an intellectual, technological channel, that's what I guess I would call it. No, but if they have a channel where they do deck reviews, they have a bunch of publishers send them decks and people send them decks, like it's kind of like their job. But they also talk about spirituality or their, religious practice in various ways, and they feel they're part of that path, then yeah, if I guess a hot topic comes up, or something happens in the world and they feel called to it, yeah, I would kind of think they would bring it up in some way. It wouldn't have to be, let's sit down and talk about this issue. Everyone's personality is different. Some people aren't comfortable doing that, publicly, but it should come through in something they do and how they present. Some people like plan their topics out months in advance, how they present a topic or a little message at the beginning or the end in some way, and some people will just have an hour-long video talking about it, right? Yeah. Or if it's totally just an intellectual channel, even though lots of people think of tarot as a spiritual thing, not everyone does.
Not everyone does, right?
Not everyone does. It's like, for some people, it's all about the arts.
Yes.
For some people, it's all about, they like to have lots of decks, cool stuff, Yeah. It just, it depends on where they're coming from.
Yeah. I agree. And I've been giving that a lot of thought lately. It's something that I've I've been thinking about for years, to be honest. And where is and here's where I need to take a step back, because I am just the kind of person that when I see an injustice in any community I'm in, I have to get involved. I can't sit back and say nothing. I have to jump in and say, this is where I stand. I am with this because I think it is the ethical thing to do. I am the kind of person that has to do that. And so I tend to judge people based on that. If you're not doing that, shame on you. But in reality, I have to step back and I have to say, some of these people were never looking for that.
Right.
When they started these channels. And not only that, but some people aren't prepared for the fallout. Some people are just not emotionally stable enough to deal with the fallout that can result from speaking openly and honesty about ethical matters. I know. You start talking about moral shaky ground and you're going to get some fallout. You're going to get people that talk about you. You're going to get people that try to blacklist you, that hate on you. You're going to deal with that. And if you're not ready for that and refuse to speak on moral topics, I can see why. It can be rough.
And not everyone's going to be as impassioned as you. Which makes you think you must have Mars on your ascendant or something. I'm like astrologically analyzing it. Not everyone's going to be impassioned about it either. And then some people are just, we don't know what's going on in their lives. Maybe they're too busy. And let's say they only have time to do that deck review that they told someone they would do for them. Right. So, yeah.
But now, if you're preaching about it constantly, preach, and then somebody calls you out on some shit, and then you don't want to say anything.
Right.
I'm not concerned about your emotional well-being.
YouTube, social media is a public forum. In my view, if you say something publicly, you leave a comment publicly, voicing your opinion, know that that is your opinion, your view, your ethics, right? Your moral perspective, and people can respond to it. They may agree, they may disagree. And then it's up to you do you want to respectfully respond to that? But you can't just put something out there publicly and think it might not stir someone up. And
yeah.
Right.
I'm going to put this out there. Nobody argue about it. Nobody talk to me about it. I just want to say this.
Say what you want. So I'm going to say what I want, but don't you say anything. Right.
Right. That's not how it works.
Right. You wouldn't be putting it out there if you didn't want to interact in some way. Or I guess you could put a video up and block the comments. Now you could do that. If you wanted to put a statement out there and not any reaction, then just.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer, on my channel, when people comment, I encourage people to disagree with me, to disagree with others, as long as it's done respectfully, without hate. Go for it. We're not going to grow if we don't have honest conversations, right?
Agreements,
and a lot of people would take those down. Large channels. If you're not agreeing with me, bye. Comment deleted. I will never do that. Short of it being, racial or hateful or name calling, I'm going to leave it up. You can say whatever you want. You can disagree with me 100%. I'll leave it up. Let other people read that and make their own decisions.
Exactly. Yeah. People, that's as long as, you're not.
If you're taking it down, all you're doing is trying to create that herd mentality or suppressing the other side. You shouldn't feel proud, to be doing anything if what you're doing is suppression. Right. There's no pride to be found in that.
No. I think I've had to block one comment on my racism video, or it was really focused on Christians, but because it was gun violence, talking about guns and attacking. I was we can't have that there. But it's when we disagree, it creates very interesting conversations, as long as everyone can discuss openly without attacking the other person, because it can open things up for all sides. Oh, I didn't see it that way, or, oh, that's interesting. I never thought someone could see it that way. Whatever it is, it makes it very interesting. But as long as it's respectful and not bashing someone, attacking someone, and then doing stuff behind their back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, that's how people bond deeper with their differences than if they all have everything in common. Because that's kind of boring. Like if everyone you knew like dressed like you, thought like you, acted like you, ate the same things as you, like
It'd be
you're
awful.
yourself.
I would not want a world filled with shames. Like,
No.
God, what would I do with myself? What would I talk about? Ugh.
Like when you're too much alike, it's just like it's either completely boring or you see everything you don't like about yourself.
And you're not getting different viewpoints. You're stuck in that same mindset all the time.
Like diversity makes life interesting.
Right.
It always. Yeah.
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 And if you're only hanging around with people that think and act and do the same things you're doing, we're not learning anything.
Not learning anything.
No.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
No.
I used to tell people, like, when I taught kids, like, if you knew all the answers on the test, that's great, but you didn't learn anything. It's like those ones you got wrong, you're like, oh, yeah, you learned something and you really remember it because you got it wrong. And then
Yes.
it's like, oh, okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Comments are quiet. Anyone have anything they want to add to the situation? Some people have come and gone.
Yes, speak up. What are we thinking?
It's funny, every time I see someone say just popping in, I see pooping.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I'm like, what? Oh, popping.
Popping off.
Pooping in. I'm just pooping in. I'm just looking at our notes here. I think we covered a lot of stuff. Oh, I guess one thing we haven't talked about is like the creator versus the content. Well, I guess we're not using those terms. Often it's referred to as like separating the art from the artist. And this has come up here and there with tarot decks, like separating the tarot deck and the art from the artist who like may have some very like racist views and things like that. Can you separate that out? Can you separate the creator from content they put out there? Should there be a separation?
My view is absolutely not. For me, there is no separation.
Yeah.
If we're going to take it to the extreme, then if I know you're a racist or you're saying racial things, in the community, and I want to say, but I really love this deck and they're the ones reviewing it, so I need to go watch it. No.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
You are supporting their channel by even the one view, and that's enough for me. That gives them one more view. And I just, even if it wasn't for that, I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't stomach that. It's just that goes against my
knowing something like that, like how could you then support, like, so an example I'm thinking of is like the Osho Zen Tarot.
Okay.
So Osho used to be called Rajneesh, and he had a cult in Oregon. And I have a friend who used to live like in the next town over in the 70s when all this cult stuff was happening. And like there's documentaries on it. You can check it out. Like, so I know this backstory before I heard of the Osho Zen Tarot of when he was called Rajneesh and his like 50 Rolls Royces and like all the stuff that went on in the cult and how they like poisoned like the salad bar at Sizzler or something like that to affect the vote so they could get their land and all this like weird stuff going on, illegal stuff, manipulative stuff. And so I knew this story. And then like the first time I saw the Osho Zen Tarot, I was like, oh, that's really interesting because it's different. Not like things that are a little different. And then I was like, oh, Rajneesh. Like I wouldn't be able to get the deck and keep that out of my mind, right? Even though it's not his creation, it's by the Osho community. And after that, he went to India and apparently was, I don't know, better.
I didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this. Like and I've never had the deck, so I don't have to worry about
it. A little research and you're like, whoa. So like, that's an example. Like I couldn't separate that work of art, that deck, from its association. He wasn't the creator, but from his association with it and the name. Like, it would be really hard to like, so like a YouTube channel to separate like a creator's like, we'll say racist views from what they present, let's say, as just a deck walkthrough. Like that would always be there in the back of my mind. Right? So it would taint my experience. So yeah, I guess for me, I wouldn't be able to totally separate the creator from the content or the artist from the art or some sort of association like that. Some people can, and I think that might come down to personality, who's like, oh, well, I just want that painting. I don't care
Well,
if
and
that
it
like,
too, it depends on what we're like. If somebody is if somebody's pro-Trump or pro-Biden, let's say, in that when that was going on, am I gonna not watch somebody because they're pro-Trump and I don't agree with
right.
some of what Trump does? Probably not. I'll probably still watch them if it's something I find interesting, if they're having a conversation that I'm involved in. I wouldn't watch anything they say about, political views, but I would still watch their channel. I think when I think about it, I think about really hardline moral, ethical behavior.
Yeah.
So when I think of small differences of opinion and stuff, yeah, we do have to move beyond that.
Yeah, that's just respecting someone who has a different view.
Right.
Kind of like if you missed it, we talked about it, because that's like political views can get very heated and people get very upset about it. But they are different views and different perspectives on things. And as long as someone isn't trying to, I say spew it on someone else and like, no, you must do this and you must follow this person and this and that, you just have different opinions and views.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when it comes to like, bigger thing, like really important things, it can be hard to separate. So it's like, we talked about this, Shane and I, earlier this week, like, can you be friends with someone with different opinions? Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Different political views. We probably all experience that within our families, and that's a little different dynamic. So it can be a little more challenging. But yeah, like you can be friends with people, you can be friendly online with people who come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, slightly different ethics than you, but are they being respectful and are they being compassionate as well? And
where are what's your cutoff? What is your nope?
Oh.
What are people going to do that you're going to say no? Where's that line drawn for you?
I haven't really thought about that. Maybe when it comes down to, are they acting violently?
Mm-hmm.
That would be my.
Are they acting without any compassion?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is for me.
Yeah.
Like I have no tolerance for intolerance, or basically I'm very much human rights in general. Mm-hmm. And if you're speaking about anything that involves human rights and you're not for equality, that sounds harsh, but that's when I cut you off. Mm-hmm. If you're not for equality for everybody.
Well, logically you think if someone's for human rights, they're for equality.
Right. But I'm saying, in any way, if you divert from that narrative, if you're not agreeing with that, mm-hmm. that's the hard line for me. And that's really the only difference of opinion I can have with people that breaks it for me. Yeah. I can disagree with you on many, many topics, but when it comes to equality for all, there's no, I can't even fathom the thought that people wouldn't agree with that.
Right. Yeah.
And I can't do it
either. I mean, it's just,
yeah.
And that's
it's uncompassionate.
Yeah. It's like,
it's unmindful.
Right? Yes. It's
yes.
Yeah, again, it comes down to, are you being respectful and compassionate and caring? I think some people get into human rights because they have a personal issue they're fighting for. And it's a human right that affects them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or
you find the most empathy.
Yeah. And they're not seeing it beyond themselves.
Yes.
That other people feel they have human rights.
Uh-huh.
And we all should have the same human rights. Right.
Yes.
But then, that gets into the personal psychology. Where are they coming from when they're for that cause, whatever it might be? Mm-hmm. And are they extending it out to others? Or is it just their own personal agenda? Which can be hard to step out of and see beyond for some people, because they may not have ever thought to look beyond their own personal agendas in life. When it comes in, up.
Well, and what I'm thinking of right now is like, okay, so I'm gay, and if you cannot jive with that, and for religious, say Christian, biblical reasons, you think that I it's not right. It's not right. I don't agree with it. I don't think you should get married to another man. Fine. There are certain people I can be like, okay, as long as you respect me, that's, we can, but that changes when, say, a law is introduced that says gay people can get married. Right. Now, I want you to take your view out of it and vote according to the fact that everybody should have equal rights, whether you agree with what they're doing or not. And if you can't take yourself out of the equation and vote according to everybody having equality, right, then my respect for you is gone. And there is no more, we can get along.
Right. Well, this brings up also, the United States is based on a separation of church and state.
It's not.
Civil matters. This is like what people ideally should do who are religious. You need to step away from your religious dogma, keep the compassion of it though, and vote accordingly. What is fair? What is equal? Right? But people don't do that. They can't separate that out. Yeah, and it's it's like, okay, I think the Catholic Church accepts it now. I don't know. Do they accept gay marriage or the union? Not marriage. They don't accept this.
No, I think he retracted. I think just a month ago I saw that the Pope retracted all of his.
Too.
Yeah.
But, so it cannot be a religious sacrament. Okay, that's fine. That's part of the religious dogma rules.
Yeah, I get it.
You can still accept the civil union of marriage.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what it is. No, I don't need to be married by a priest. I see how that interferes with some of your beliefs there. I don't agree, but I'm respecting your right to have that opinion. But you in turn need to respect that I'm not asking for a biblical marriage. I'm asking for a civil union.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way off topic.
Yeah. I mean, but it ties in somehow. Let me see what she said. What Osho said about AIDS, for example, is absolutely disgusting. Oh, what did he say about AIDS? Oh, the disease AIDS. Or AIDS as people.
Even more bad about Osho.
Thing.
Yeah, and Oya's girl says, but I am learning that most debt creators are creating from their perspective of the world. So yeah, we need to be.
Where is that? Wait, is that puppet? I don't see a comment. 2 up. Did I?
Yes, AIDS.
I'm like, where?
Maybe it didn't show up for you.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, we do need to be mindful when we are judging and criticizing even decks, because we can get carried away with that. There's one in particular lately that I am not thrilled with. I think it's very just no, we're not going to go there. But you do, it is, you have to step back and think, just like when somebody says something you don't agree with, acting in ways you don't agree with, you have to step back and you have to say, how were they raised? How were they conditioned? What did they listen to? What culture, what community did they, and if we're not looking at that and we're judging based off of only what people say, we're constantly going to fall short. We're constantly going to have nasty disagreements because we're refusing to acknowledge that we are going to have different views simply because we have been raised in such different ways.
Yeah.
It's obvious to me and to you and to a lot of other people, but it's not so obvious to some. And people want to keep arguing and shouting and everything without realizing that there is a gap here. There's a communication gap. There is a cultural gap, and that is what needs to be addressed. That's what we need to talk about,
It's hard when people grow up in like a homogenous location. So I grew up in San Francisco. Culturally, racially, religiously, sexual orientationally, very diverse. That was, I grew up basically in the Castro. So like to me, it's like, okay, great. You're this way, whatever. Right. Yeah. And, sometimes it's been hard for me to realize that some people grow up in a very all white Midwest, straight type of location, and that they're not exposed to people of different races and backgrounds and everything else. And so it's weird for them. Like, so I tried to like think of an imaginary scenario. Okay, let's say I was walking down the street and I saw someone who was all purple or something. Oh yeah, that'd be weird. I'd be like, well, actually, I'd probably be like, oh, cool. But a normal, like most people would be like, oh my God, that's so weird. And there may be a reaction to it and a pushing away and a fear. And so people are responding from those reactions of something that's different. They're not used to, they don't know. It's the fear of the unknown, basically. And then that brings up whatever stuff they've got inside of them that they then project on that person, and then the groupings that person comes from, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And some people just have no ambition whatsoever to step out of their bubble, of their community. Yeah, they don't want to step out. They don't want to remain safe.
Mentality.
Yeah.
You know, because they can be outside the physical bubble, but that mentality is still there. Yeah. And it blocks them. But going back to what Queen Osset said, deck creators are creating from their perspective of the world. And yeah, we have to, like anyone creating something, an artist, whatever, it comes from their perspective because they're the one creating it. And what is their perspective of the world? You know?
Mm-hmm. I am going to give this example. I'm going to say, I don't think it's going to be controversial, really. The White Newman. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I don't have a vision of it in my head. So
okay, I watched The Tiger's the Best did a live review on it maybe about a week ago. And for me, I'm a feminist. Mm-hmm. Like, I believe women could rule the world much better than men. I'm a feminist. But this deck was nothing but angry feminine energy to me. I mean, one of the cards was a woman having a knife across the man's throat ready to cut his head off. Like, it was almost violently feminist. And so I'm like, no, too far. Yeah. But like Oya's girl is saying, I don't know who this girl is. I think she's Hispanic, and maybe, I could be wrong, but I think she is. She may have grown up somewhere where, you know, she is just breaking out of the shell. She is realizing that the world is far bigger than she thought it was. And so she grew up with a distrust and a distaste for men that took advantage of her, maybe, or,
I don't know. Family situation and like the ideals she was brought up with, mm-hmm. right? Yeah.
And while I don't like the deck at all, it's probably going to, you know, appeal to a lot of different kinds of people, you know, and that is kind of the beauty of the deck creations today. While I'm trying to get away from materialism, right? Mm-hmm. It is still a great thing that there are so many varying decks because they can appeal to many more different cultures and people.
Yeah.
You know?
And different.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. You think of it as a good thing, but it also spurs on the idea of materialism and needing more and needing different and needing the next best thing. And that's another topic.
The deck market is oversaturated right now. I mean, I'm a deck creator on a very small scale, but because I see a lot of stuff coming out, like that's just another version of this, or like that's the artwork that's just like this artwork. And as a deck creator, I'm like, oh, they use the same art program, blah blah blah. You know, like I have these other thoughts that go through my head, and it can be a bit, it's oversaturated. But that's another topic.
It is, yeah. Sorry, we'll stop there.
I just wanna.
So she told us about
AIDS. Oh wait, we did that one. Okay. Those with AIDS should be set apart in their own residential. This is what Osho said. Wow. That's like a leper colony. You know, let's have a leper colony and let
I'm
them
not even mad about it. Like
society, and it's shaming. It's maybe he was coming from the idea that it wouldn't spread, but that's up to people's responsibility, you know.
That's one of those things that's so blatantly ignorant that I'm not even angry. I'm just like,
it's just
I'm laughing. Like, okay.
That must have been in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, I grew up in the hub of the AIDS pandemic in the US. My kindergarten teacher, a nun, died of AIDS from a blood transfusion. Like, I was like in the whole experience.
And at the point where he wrote that, there wasn't as much known about AIDS. So it did come out of ignorance,
There
but
was
maybe not
fear. There was a lot of
self-inflicted.
fear. Yeah, I mean, I remember there was a lot of fear. People were scared. They didn't know if it could be transmitted through, like, through the air. Because I remember, being on the bus with my grandma, and she'd be like, "Keep your mouth closed just in case," But we still Castro. We didn't shy away from it. And that mentality is reflected in the decks that are being created. Yeah.
That they're looking at it from their own viewpoint of the world. It sure is in every deck. Yeah.
Also the experience. Yeah. As one moves about the world. And
yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah, because I feel so lucky to have been born gay. It makes me more open-minded. And that's not true for every gay person. I've met some really closed-minded, nasty gay people. But for the general population of gay people, I think it automatically gives them a sense of empathy for minorities. Mm-hmm. And then also, I have been in many different states. I have gone to India twice. I have dated 2 Indian men. So I have tried my best to at least step out of this bubble and to realize there has been nothing better than going to India for me. Yeah. It showed me there is everything that could be different was different. It's just an entirely different world there. And it just showed, some people just aren't even aware that there are different cultures and there are different things going on in the world than what's happening in little old Midland, Michigan.
Bubbles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be weird not to know that there are other races in this country, but people think that everyone else thinks just like them because that's what they know. And, quite shocking to the ego, shocking to the intellect to go outside of that and be like, oh, wow. And a lot of people, again, will respond with fear and pushing back. Mm-hmm. Some people would be like, oh, this is really cool. And then immerse themselves in the culture, right? Yeah. Every reaction is different. Wait, let's see. My upbringing is a bit different than my world experiences. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not always closed off and then, oh, equality. It can be equality. And then experiences can then shift our perspective on that.
That's very true. You grow up and all that disillusionment, all those fairy tales disappear. And that might make it harder on people for somebody to be brought up, being taught about equality and for everybody. And then to step out into a world that does not support equality and is oppressive.
Right.
That can make one angrier than they might have ever been in the first place because that fantasy is everything they were told is a lie. Everything they thought was true. Everything that they believe in. Mm-hmm. That's rough.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking yes, a lot of equality in San Francisco, but then there's still a lot of racism and homophobia and stuff going on. Is an interesting mix. I mean, I remember my brother, he was in high school. He was on the bus coming home and he got attacked by a group of kids of a different race for no reason because of how he looked, and my brother's gay, but I don't think they would have known that. He wasn't out in high school, but I don't think they would know that. But it's like these sort of opposing mentalities and energy in this one hippie place, that's all loving and everyone's different and blah, blah, blah. But then you still see that. So it's a little shock to the system occasionally.
Yeah, and you said it a few minutes ago, people often react more angrily to things that they don't understand. Yeah. Just out of instinct. I don't know what that is. I don't understand it. So I'm not going to like it. This is wrong. This is bad. I've never been like that. I feel so lucky and I don't know why. Because it certainly wasn't in my upbringing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't in my upbringing.
The personality.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's hardwired somehow. If some of that's hardwired.
Are you an Aquarius?
Huh?
Are you an Aquarius in Western astrology?
No, I'm a Cancer.
In Western astrology? What's your ascendant?
Yes. Both my sons in both astrologies are Sagittarius, I think, was my ascendant in Western.
Okay. I'm curious.
Now,
just listening to you talk, I'm like, what is he?
I'm a triple water, according to Real Sky,
right.
Which is what I prescribe to.
Yeah.
Yeah, triple water.
Interesting. A lot of water. Okay. Back to the topic.
Yeah, that's right. I work through that every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that's rough. That's rough. I was more prepared because I grew up really strict. I had a Christian pastor father, and then lived with my grandma and went to a Lutheran school. So I grew up thinking that the world wasn't going to accept the fact that I was gay. Right. So when I went out into the world, it was everything that I expected it to be. So I can't imagine being brought up thinking that it was absolutely fine, to realize there was a world out there that did not accept me. So many props for being, working through that. Like, it's rough.
Yeah. I just, every place, every group of people is going to be a different experience for everyone in different ways. Yeah.
And there are places where, people are more accepted. And there are places where, and that just, and I've been thinking about that for so long, but I'm terrified that, I'm stuck and I've been stuck in Midland, Michigan. It's predominantly white, predominantly Republican. There's a big company here that everybody works at, so they take very good care of the city. It's very safe. And I keep, how much does that limit me? How much does that limit my growth? I can try to be as open-minded as possible and do my research and talk to people, but am I really embodying it? Can I really take it in if I'm not living? Because I could easily move to a larger city where there is more diversity and there is more acceptance of cultures and races and sexual orientations, and I wonder how much that would help me. And that's a whole other subject too, because I'm terrified to do the moving, terrified of change. I used to be, when I was younger, this kind of fits in. When I was younger, I was so good with change. I moved around a lot, changed relationships a lot. I was constantly changing all through my 20s. And now that I'm older, and a little bit, flatlined, I'm trying a little bit more level-headed. I've learned a little bit more. I don't want change. I like my room. I like stability. And that's a good thing for me
right now.
I do. But it can also be very limiting.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, you could go on a little 1-month trip somewhere, live somewhere for a month and try it out. You don't have to
Florida.
Commit it. You could just say, let me try this out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I plan on it.
I don't think ethics and spirituality can coexist. Who makes laws? Who sets guidelines? Yeah. So you weren't different. They can change. They're not so much like dogmatic laws. And I do think, I agree, like inherently we know what is right and wrong, but our upbringings, our cultures, our thinking can block that or steer us away from it, or
I see what you're saying. Ethics and spirituality are, and that was the title of this, was ethics and spirituality. They are different things. And I do agree to a point. I think we do inherently know right from wrong in an overall very broad scheme. But when it comes down to specifics, we don't. Right now, we all know that I am very much against what has recently happened in the community. Somebody was thrown under the bus, and there is never an excuse for that. But other people will argue, and I've had conversations with people already, that it was 100% appropriate. And both of us are coming from this viewpoint, we're 100% right. We believe that spiritually, that wasn't the right thing to do, and spiritually, that was the right thing to do. And that makes it so, so hard.
Yeah.
You can't prove who's right. All you can do is talk about it. And right now, I'm stubborn about it. And so are other people. And how do you then communicate about it when it's something that isn't just inherently right or wrong?
Let each party voice their view and opinion. And sometimes it just stops there for a while, especially if both sides are like, no, I am right.
Yes.
You can't just go like attacking each other. That's not going to lead to anything.
No.
Okay,
No.
I heard your view. I heard your view. Let's sit with it for a bit.
Yeah, and sometimes it is all we can do.
Yeah.
Sometimes discussion is not the best thing to do.
You feel that is the right thing. Okay, great. See you later. Talk to you next time.
Yeah. Agree to disagree. Let's both talk about our viewpoints, and then people can decide for themselves, and that's fine.
Yeah. I clearly missed something that took place.
We won't talk about it.
Back, like how
it was an example. Overall, I'm talking about there are certain situations that aren't inherently right or wrong. I think overall, broadly, there are things that we all know inside our hearts are right or wrong. But when it comes down to specifics and situations, those are very much conditioned by what we're being told, what we've been taught, and how we feel.
Go to Shane's channel.
Yeah, go to my channel.
Watch the last video. Okay. I think we covered everything. Anything else you want to add?
No, I love this conversation. I really appreciate you.
I'm at my time limit where I feel like I'm tired.
Yeah.
I need to and it's getting warm in here because the door's
same.
up, and I'm turning very pink. So anything else anyone in the watching in the chat wants to add in before we say goodbye and let you think about this, let it sink in and mull about it for a while? Okay, take a look. Thanks, Natalie. Give you guys a minute for the delay.
Yeah, but thank you, really.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, thank you. I just want to say thank you for having me on your channel and being willing to do this.
No problem. I mean, there's always things I want to talk about, and sometimes I just need someone else to say, hey, let's talk about it. I'm like, oh yeah, let me schedule that in.
Spirituality.
What would happen if we do not use the term of spirituality as a footstool?
As a footstool. I've never heard that. Footstool. So spiritually as a footstool, are we talking about spirituality to give us a one-up, using spirituality to say, I'm right, or that this is right because it is the spiritual thing to do?
Well, I guess we titled this because it's talking to people who say they come from a spiritual perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to have it come from a spiritual perspective, practice, or religion to be an ethical, as in a kind and compassionate and respectful human being. Yeah, so we don't have to use that. But I guess just as I was coming to is like the spiritual communities was, I guess, who we're addressing, who we're talking about.
That would be a good discussion, Oya's girl. Very good discussion that we could have at a later time. Like, how do we define spirituality? Yeah. How is that? We didn't talk a whole lot about that. I think it was mentioned, but that is another topic that could last 2 hours.
Another one, yes. Hi, Parug. Thank you for being here. Natalie says, yes, it's an sensational beast to rest on our laurels. Yeah. Okay.
Spirituality as a footstool in that sense as well.
For some people, I think for some people they use that as their spiritual bypassing. Well, I'm spiritual, so therefore I'm right. Right? I'm spiritual. You're not. I'm spiritual, and you're being all ego. So I think people use it as their way to bypass addressing especially things within themselves. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to talk about those topics externally, even though they might attack it and bring it up, then there's something they don't want to look at within usually.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think we're good. Thank you, Shane. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you.
It's fun talking to you. We can do another one time. Maybe Queen Osset will do a what is spirituality chat. I don't know.
There you go. There you go.
So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you everyone who watches back later. Continue the conversation in the comments. Both Shane and I will check back.
So if there's any questions or any conversation going on, I'll check back and I'll join in.
Yeah, join in the conversation. Yeah, otherwise, tomorrow is the full moon. Happy full moon, everyone. And yeah, we'll see y'all later.